Coldplay are a British rock band formed in London in 1996. What?
That's what got me. London.
That's how you say it.
Oh my god.
And they've been active from 1996 to the present day. And it looks to me like they've just been who they are the entire time,
That is correct.
which is
You got to love it.
rare. I mean, extremely rare. Not as rare as what we'll talk about in the next group, but still quite rare.
To be fair, Robert Cray was himself for his entire career.
That's a great point. You are correct. I stand corrected. It's not rare.
Yeah.
It's common. Everybody does it.
Mm-hmm.
And the 3 albums that we listened to for Coldplay were Parachutes, which came out in 2000, A Rush of Blood to the Head from 2002, and then Music of the Spheres from 2021. And it is my turn to go first.
It is.
That is how it works. And here's what I'll say. I win. Because I got to talk about the best one first. Because this is the best Coldplay album. Consistently. It's the best one all the way through, I think. Which is extremely unheard of, usually. That the first album is one of the best. A Rush of Blood to the Head, which I know is good. I mean, we'll talk about it. It's not bad at all. And we'll have, I'm sure, glowing reviews of both albums. But I really enjoyed this album because I feel like this album is a little bit less of like that super spacey Coldplay.
Mm-hmm.
You know, because like Coldplay can definitely, you know, I mean, Chris Martin can sing, although I like this album for another reason too, which I'll get to. Chris Martin can sing, and everybody's playing well here pretty consistently throughout Coldplay's discography. But there's a little bit of like extra atmosphere that they throw in a lot of the time. And I felt like this album had a little bit less of that throughout. And I really enjoyed that Coldplay vibe. The other thing that I'm going to just keep doing it. The other thing that I really liked about this album was I feel like throughout the years, Chris Martin's accent while singing has gone away. So I love listening to early Coldplay when his accent is still quite strong.
Mm-hmm.
But all in all, I mean, Trouble, Yellow, Don't Panic, Parachutes, the title track. There's a lot of like pretty iconic Coldplay songs.
Sure.
And I think they're all quite strong.
Yes, I agree. This is a very good record. And it is one of those records, happily, that was critically acclaimed as well as commercially successful. Because once in a while you find that area where everybody just agrees, critics and fans, like,
As
this
they
is
should.
just a really good record. And Chris Martin, like you mentioned, strong voice, really good falsetto, and I like there's something about the way he sings where it all feels just so effortless and throwaway, especially his transitions between his chest voice and his falsetto.
Oh,
that's really well done.
The
and it
head
continues
voice
to get
transition.
Better. Yeah, and he continues to get better at that throughout these records.
Agreed.
And I think, like you mentioned, you mentioned the big hits. Trouble might be my favorite one on this record. I just love that song.
Sure.
But everything that wasn't a huge hit holds up really well. Like Everything's Not Lost, which was the last track, had some like very interesting jazzy chords thrown into the progression that, you know, you often don't hear things like that in successful mainstream artists. And while the playing on this record the parts are mostly kind of sparse and simply done, but it's it's the orchestration, it's the overall composition of the songs that makes them great. Take 20 very simple ideas and parts to put together to form the entire song, and you really end up with something special. And I think that's what they did here. And I think that very much continues with A Rush of Blood to the Head. So this record, their second record, is a little bit harder in the sense that, I mean, not that it's like a hard record so much, but compared to their first one, which is probably their most like laid back and acoustic in its vibe overall.
Right.
But you get a ton of great songs on here. I know you said that you thought that their first record was hands down the best. I think this one holds up equally well. It's ranked 324 on Rolling Stone's top 500 albums of all time. And right from the get-go, like a lot of my favorite Coldplay songs are on this record, starting with Politic, which I just love the orchestration of Politic, especially, just it really hammers you with that intro. Uh, and
But
it's
Nick, as
just
an English
followed.
teacher, it doesn't bother you that it's misspelled?
Not at all. Not
But
even a
you're
little
an
bit.
English teacher, Nick.
I prefer it to be misspelled, actually.
Fair enough.
But then it just hits you with like the 4 singles in a row. In My Place, God Put a Smile Upon Your Face, The Scientist and Clocks, all hits, all great songs. Green Eyes is also on here, which is fantastic. Like, just everything that I liked about the first album. It's maybe a little bit more intricate what they're doing with the individual parts now, but it's really the overall orchestration of each piece that makes it great.
Sure.
And again, critical and commercial success, and deservedly so. I think they start off their career with a lot of strong records.
Yeah. Okay. Listen, when I said that I think Parachutes is hands down the best album, it has nothing to do with my opinion of A Rush of Blood to the Head, because it's definitely like 1 and then a close 2 for me.
Mm-hmm.
I just think that I prefer Yellow and Trouble and Don't Panic more than I prefer like The Scientist and Clocks.
Sure.
Which I think are both really good songs, but I've heard all of the songs I just mentioned probably close to 1,000 times in my life throughout
Sure.
radio, pop culture, and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
And The Scientist is really good and really elegant, but not very dynamic. And
Yeah.
Clocks is, after your 1,000th listen, a bit repetitive. And that's kind of what it just boils down to. I think that these albums are really strong all the way through. I do agree that Chris Martin is vocally improving, although even in this album compared to the last one, starting to lose the accent a little bit, and that
Sure.
just makes me sad because he's Chris Martin from Coldplay, and I like that. But, again, thoroughly enjoyed this album.
Mm-hmm.
Thoroughly enjoyed these first 2 albums. Not shocked. And it's ironic because of our formula, we're not even going to talk about their definitely biggest song in this band, which is Viva La Vida.
I wonder if the single sales will bear that out. I need to check.
I would be shocked if Viva La Vida wasn't their biggest song. It's
It
like
is
the
triple
song.
platinum is a single.
Yeah.
A Sky Full of Stars is also triple platinum.
Okay, dude, please don't. Come on.
Oh, I'm just telling you.
If you
something
ask,
just like this with the Chainsmokers is a 9 times platinum single, not the one that I would identify the most with the group.
If you ask million people, over 900,000 of them will say the Revolution song. Revolution. They're not. I mean, or they might say Clock or whatever.
Viva La Vida.
They'll say Viva La Vida. Maybe not by name, but they'll say Viva La Vida. If there's one thing I know, it's people don't know the names of songs.
If there's one thing, a prime example, my friend.
That is, how dare you?
Mm-hmm.
How could you possibly say such a truthful thing?
Mm-hmm. Talk about the last album, would you?
Yes, I will talk about the last album. And yes, you did jump into us talking about Coldplay. But if you, I would look away from this part. Throughout history, Nick.
Is that how you're going to start this?
Throughout all of recorded time, and especially as we have done this episode and done the entire podcast in general, there has been a trend of artists who we loved from the early 2000s to go pop.
Yeah.
And it's a terrible disease that overtakes them when it happens, and we bow our heads in a moment of silence. And unfortunately, Coldplay like half got it. Coldplay like half got the pop disease in this album. Uh, they're doing some stuff here.
Mm-hmm.
They're doing some stuff. They're doing some experimenting with like Eno-esque atmospheric noises and like filler sounds and computerized soundscapes that they are singing and playing over. Now, I'm not against it. However, when you compare it to the two albums that we've compared it to, it is a cliff dive for me. This album is objectively mid. Like, it's not an album that I hate. I'm not going to say, like, this isn't Train. I'm not going to say Coldplay jumped the shark. There. Yeah, Coldplay didn't jump the shark and go pop mainstream dumb. Like, there's still artistic qualities involved. They're still, like, putting in, like, interesting musical interludes and, like, instrumental pieces to kind of elevate it. But it almost feels like you're decorating a turd. Like you're putting really nice flowers and bows on just a pile of crap.
Sure.
Because some of these songs are just bad. And they sound bad and they sound overly poppy. And that's disappointing and makes me worried for the future. It makes me worried for the next Coldplay album because our formula has typically shown that once you pop, you don't stop pop.
Right.
Once you pop, you just pop, 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 pop.
Mm-hmm.
And that worries me. Objectively mid, a worrying sign for the future.
Okay. So, just to get all the suspense out of the way, I mostly agree with everything that you're saying. But I looked at the track listing on this album before I started, and I made a bunch of predictions about what I would think about it, and they were all correct. So, first of all, every one of these songs has several different co-writers aside from the members of Coldplay, who are always listed first, to be fair. And I knew I was immediately going to like this album overall much less than the others because it was going to be way poppier.
Yeah.
I saw hope in two places. One, in the very short little musical interlude pieces, and in the final track, Coloratura, which is over 10 minutes long. And guess what were my favorite pieces on this record?
My favorite pieces as well.
Fantastic. And I hope if they really want to like dig in on what's interesting to them as musicians, and it's that last song, then there's a lot of hope left for this group that the next album could be great still. But the rest of it, not particularly good. I looked at who they were working with,
which
with the
leads me
artists.
to something important here.
Sure.
Which I don't know if this is going to be super loud on Twitch. I'm sorry if it is. That sounded super quiet. I'm going to do it again.
Yeah.
That was much too loud.
Okay.
Either way, Selena Gomez is one of them.
Yeah, and I saw that and I'm like, this song is going to suck. And it was not good. To be fair, I think Coldplay brought Selena and she brought them down. But it was not good. Same thing with the song with BTS. That song sucked. That was terrible. However...
Okay, hold on.
You go ahead.
This is important.
Yeah, go ahead.
We here at TotemTalks are not saying BTS is awful or horrible. We're saying that maybe that was all Coldplay's fault. Nick is an old man and has no idea of the very rabid and aggressive fan base that BTS has.
Oh, sure. But I'm just saying the song they did with Coldplay was terrible.
I'll save
my opinion of them. I'll save my opinion of them for when we cover them on the show.
Oh, we will never cover them on the show, Nick.
Okay, good to know.
We will never cover BTS on the show.
Anyway, more importantly, The last collaboration they did was with a duo called We Are King that I had never heard of, but I'm a little bit more interested in them now. And Jacob Collier. And the second I saw Jacob Collier's name, I was like, okay, we're going to get an interesting composition. And it was
Yes.
like so obvious that Collier was like the main writer on the song. I know he's not listed first, but it has every hallmark of a Jacob Collier song. Incredibly lush harmonies. The whole song is done in like probably 30 or 40 different vocal harmony parts are recorded to get that like
Yeah.
very lush sound where the vocals feel like they're all melting together in the same way that he records all of his studio records. And Jacob Collier is, and I don't love all of his albums, I love some of them, but an absolutely fascinating composer of music to listen to
Yes.
on a song by song basis. Like definitively a genius when it comes to orchestrations, even when I don't
For
think he's
better or worse at times. I completely agree, though.
yeah. And that's it. That's all I have to say. So this album lived up to my expectations. I liked what I thought I was going to like. I hated what I thought I was going to hate. And that's that.
Fun fact that I forgot to mention is Humankind was co-written by Stephen Fry.
Fantastic.
Just forgot that I wanted to say that. Okay, so I think there's nothing left. Let's grade them.
Let's do it. So
they're huge. They got to get a big score here.
Yes.
Over 20 years of sustained success. Millions to 100 million album sales.
Yeah, 100 million albums. They are the most successful band of the 21st century. No other band has sold more records than Coldplay since the year 2000. They are the biggest band of the last 22 years. Whether you love them or hate them, Coldplay is enormous. I would have a hard time giving the biggest band of the last 22 years not at least close to a 9, if not a 9.
Oh man, I can only Vermilion in our chat real quick did mention that the BTS song was played at every Wawa for like months on end.
I've never heard a BTS song except for the one they did with Coldplay, so I don't know.
I'm sure somewhere in your life you heard Dynamite.
Maybe by accident.
You had to have. You work at a pub. You work at a school.
That's correct.
There's no way, like in the hallways.
Maybe.
Like I think
they don't project
BTS,
a bunch of music into the halls that often.
But when they do, it's BTS, man.
When they do, yeah.
They are ginormous.
Yeah. Oh, I'm well aware of who they are.
Which is how you should know how ginormous they are, that you know who they are.
Yeah.
Let's be clear.
Okay.
But yeah, so Coldplay.
It's a 9 to me.
It's a 9. It could argue in the 9s. I would be more. I think this is a number that's gonna inch up probably every 5 or so years.
Sure.
Because the artists that get 10s for us have been around for literal
eons,
50 years plus. And I think that while in the last 20 years it's been Coldplay, I just need to see 20 more years of it for them to be a 10. If they have 20 more years of at least 80% of where they're at now, they're a 10.
Be remarkable. Yeah, they would.
Which is what a 10 is.
Yeah.
A 10 is a remarkable thing.
Yeah.
So yeah, a 9 even I think is perfect.
And breadth of work.
9 albums.
They have 9 albums, 100 million in sales, consistently good sales between albums and singles. Yeah. Like there's nowhere to really knock them. I don't know where Coldplay really starts going wrong. I know I love their first 4 albums I don't know what else to do with that.
Here's the thing. They're going to get a quality bump that is a little bit lessened by the knock on the last album, because we have to go with what we know.
But there is still a quality. There's more bump than not.
There's more bump than not bump, and the fact that every album is certifying.
Yeah,
like they have never released an album that hasn't certified in at least 3 places.
Right, and again, when you hit certain thresholds in your overall sales, we're looking at a number that's not too far off from the cultural impact.
No, it's in the 8s. I think it's probably in the upper 8s. I would say probably like an 8.6.
And I am typing that in for you. You've got it.
Cool.
Instrumental talent. I mean, it lessened on the last album to me, except for in certain places where they still displayed some interesting stuff. It was never necessarily the instrumental talent, with the exception of Chris Martin's voice, that I thought made the first 2 albums great. It absolutely never hurt There was never a time where I was like, oh, they can't
Correct.
play, so they're doing that.
They're
But it seemed
never
to me that the songwriting was what made the songs great, not the playing itself.
they're never below average.
Yeah.
But I think they hold themselves back from a truly good score. This is probably going to be arguably their worst score.
I would put it in the lower half of the fives for sure.
And I would completely agree. I'd be like a 5.2-ish.
And I'm fine with that. And
'cause I
that's
think
for
that-
me, honestly, it's Chris Martin bringing them up a little bit higher than that, and then
Yeah.
the
last album
kind of
putting them down a
boring
little bit.
pop nonsense bringing them down a little bit.
Yep.
And I feel similarly with songwriting because I think the orchestrations that they come up with on their first couple of records are
Yeah.
really good, consistently interesting and creative. And then it's just like, let's just churn out a bunch of pop songs that are going to be hits with Max Martin after that. Not great. Not a great look for me.
It's not a great look for me either. And just kind of looking at the last couple albums that they released. So they obviously had, the one we just listened to, Music of the Spheres.
Mhm.
Everyday Life, you look at the writer-producer page on that, it's another cluster.
I hate to do that.
A true cluster. And then I'll go back one more and give it a look-see. A Head Full of Dreams, which came out in 2015. I'll see, what this writing
It's
looks
all
like.
Coldplay and then someone by the name of Stargate, or it's a duo of producers and songwriters called Stargate.
Okay, so that's
more like a team up,
a more
album,
consistent.
where you
yeah.
have and even Robert Cray had his producers co-writing some of his songs on his
Sure.
record. So it's not really that uncommon.
I'm definitely not against that. After that, where it gets a little wonky, that's the trouble. And then the one before that, it's the writers are all Coldplay with a couple. So that seems to be that one with Stargate seems to be the fracture
Sure.
of when they started incorporating a bunch of writers and stuff after that. So
I'm willing to be on the right side of 5 again. Definitely deserve to be a good bit above 5 from their first 4 records.
yeah.
And then the other stuff is going to bring them down a little bit, but it's not a bad score.
Yeah, I mean, realistically, I would probably say you start at a 5.
Mm-hmm.
Each album of quality brings me up a 0.1. And each album of bad quality brings me down a 0.1. And I'll sit comfortably at like a 5.4.
Okay. That's a little bit lower than I was thinking, but
could be a 5.5. I could be talked
let's
into
do
a
that.
5.5.
Let's do that because I know we didn't cover all their stuff. I think their first 4 albums are all different enough from each other.
We only covered the first 2, Nick. Move on.
I know. But there's enough attention given to each song as well, where I think there's enough distinctly different and interesting songwriting happening from song to song early in their career to be a little bit. And I think the lyrics, at least in the first couple albums, were always good to me.
Agreed. I do think that they have a tendency for a little bit of I'm trying to find the right word here. They don't subvert you. They kind of go where you expect them to go sometimes.
Yeah.
I don't feel like most of their songs, especially their really popular songs, they don't feel deeper than they are to me.
That's fine. Yeah.
It's not a bad thing, but it's the difference between somebody who we talk about their writing moving us and somebody who are like, oh, that's good writing.
Sure.
And I think it's good writing, but it's not great writing, and it's probably in that similar 5 area.
I would be a little bit above the average.
I'd be fine going to, again, like a 5.4, 5.5. I think that's a good spot for them. They're above average, but you add in some of the negatives of the last album being really poppy, and even some of their stuff in the good albums being a little bit predictable.
For sure. I'll go with the 5.4 this time. And then we'll X Factor. I mean, I think there's something to be said for the fact that they currently are the group in the century in which we are living who has sold the most records. They are definitively the most successful band of the century in which we currently live.
Okay, I mean that's a good one, but that's not the reason
Yeah.
they're getting X Factor.
Okay, fair enough. I mean, Chris Martin is also super involved in a ton of different charity things. I'd have to
Yeah,
go
I
look. I
mean,
know that he's very active in that stuff. I don't.
sure, and that's
Oh,
all great. Love that for him.
he's also the second artist that we've had who has appeared on Curb Your Enthusiasm after Alanis Morissette.
You're getting closer to why they're getting X Factor. You're getting
Super Bowl
closer.
halftime show.
No,
You
again,
did.
you're
You told
missing
me
all.
before that if you've done the Super Bowl, it's worth something.
Agreed. These are all great points.
All right,
And these
just
are
tell
all
me
be
the damn
factored
thing.
in. Nick, there was a little TV show that was on a few years ago
Never
that
heard.
Coldplay, specifically drummer Will Champion, had a cameo in. And he played a little song called The Rains of Castamere at the Red
Really?
Wedding.
No way.
Yes. Yes.
Fascinating.
It is 100% true. Yeah, so Coldplay was involved in the Red Wedding.
Okay. I mean,
so that
that's a big
coupled
deal.
with the very accurate things you said, Super Bowl, ton of charity work, ton of, Curb Your
Yeah.
Enthusiasm, I'd be fine giving them a full point of X Factor.
And I shall put that in there.